the Camera Raw filter in Photoshop. Now it's here, filter menu, Camera Raw filter. I am pointing to it for a very important lesson. There is something called Adobe Camera Raw. Now, Adobe Camera Raw, quickly, and I unpack this greatly in my Adobe Camera Raw course and in my Bridge course. Adobe Camera Raw is the engine that edits RAW files in Lightroom. Adobe Camera Raw is the engine that edits RAW files in Bridge and in Photoshop, if in fact you are editing RAW files. Now, we can always learn more about RAW files, but here's what they truly are at their heart and their core. They are indestructible files. They are files that you can do anything to without losing any data. No tones, no pixels. You can't lose colors, none of those things. And that's why we would choose to use Lightroom, which is coming up week 4, or Bridge with Adobe Camera Raw next week, week 3, over Photoshop. Photoshop is a destructive image editor. All right, so I'm going to refer to Adobe Camera Raw proper, Adobe Camera Raw proper as the real and non-destructive Adobe Camera Raw engine that truly is under all 3 programs, provided you are editing a RAW file. That's key. Now, I have fallen in love, as many of you have, with the Develop module in Lightroom, or with Adobe Camera Raw and its sliders accessed via Bridge. We love those tools. And always more we can learn about those tools and love them even more. But what we love about those tools is 2 things: their editing capability and their non-destructibility. Welcome to Photoshop's Camera Raw filter. It's a fake. It's a fake. It gives me access to all the tools I've come to know and love in Adobe Camera Raw, its sliders. Now, if you're a Lightroom user, hardcore, and you're looking at these sliders, you think they look a little different, but it's still Adobe Camera Raw, all the same sliders that you're familiar with in the Develop module, although the interface is slightly different. The icons have slightly different drawings. But these are the sliders. This looks exactly to me, as a Bridge user, what Adobe Camera Raw looks like when I access it from Bridge. It's what it looks like. If you're a Lightroom user, it looks like this. It looks like this. I'm going to hit cancel. So I have access to the tools, but it's not non-destructive. Rick, that's a double negative. You're right, it's destructive. So be careful when you're editing in Photoshop. Now, with training, with Photoshop training, I can teach you how to edit files nearly 100% non-destructively, but you have to be taught. Whew. In the Adobe Camera Raw engine, you can't hurt the baby, even if you haven't had any jungle training. Welcome to the jungle of Photoshop. So I'm going to give you a piece of jungle training. It's worth knowing, and this is going to be our last bonus video for the Photoshop week as we prepare our way towards full-fledged masks in Adobe Camera Raw proper. The real Adobe Camera Raw. The non-destructive Adobe Camera Raw. You're hearing me, aren't you? Since I want access to the filter and its tools, but by default it is destructive, I need to protect my image. And I do that here. The background layer, I'm going to go to the flyout menu with that layer highlighted, targeted, and convert that layer into a smart object. Hey, look at me. Be a smart object and convert your layers to smart objects whenever possible. That is a part of Photoshop jungle training. If I do that, convert to smart object, I get a little icon that shows up at the bottom right of the thumbnail, right there. That is the stamp, the branding mark. That's the visual recognition that this is in fact a saved image. It's somehow protected. It's wrapped in bubble wrap. If you're going, first major point, if you're going to use, and you'll want to, the Camera Raw filter in Photoshop, and you'll want to, please convert your layers individually or as groups of layers. They can become one smart object. Convert your layers, your artwork, to smart objects before going to the Camera Raw filter. You'll thank me. You'll have higher quality throughout. I show you all of that because next week we're going to simplify, thank goodness, mask usage. They're awesome. They're simple. They're all in one place, you'll see. So I'm going to introduce you to them here. I'm not going to show you how to use them this week. You're probably brain pumped, drained already. So I'm going to go to the Camera Raw filter. It's the very final act that we do in the Photoshop training for the Magic of Mask course. Here I am. Now, why would I even be in Photoshop to access the fake Adobe Camera Raw? Why wouldn't I just go out and use the real Adobe Camera Raw? Grab your pencil. Because if you're not editing a RAW file, it's too late. What? If you've already, hang on. If you've already brought an image into Photoshop for one of those big 5 reasons, completely legitimate, compositing, cloning, creating, cutting, and type, if you have in fact left Lightroom or Bridge, Adobe Camera Raw, and entered the jungle of Photoshop for one of these 5 valid reasons, you're stuck. Stay put. Don't go back to Lightroom. Don't go back to Bridge. You're adding layers of complexity for no added value. Instead, pencil. If you already have a PSD, a Photoshop document, you already have a TIFF, you already have a JPEG, or a PNG, a PNG, stay put. Stay in Photoshop. But I miss my tools. And that's exactly why we're having this discussion. If you want to go access the tools, and you're already in Photoshop with those file types, make a smart object and enter the fake, but still lovable and adorable Adobe Camera Raw tools. I'm going to hit the letter M and show you that masks exist here. And they're compact and collected and beautiful right here. They aren't all over the place like they were in the landscape of Photoshop. Added over years of time, 33 years of me in Photoshop, and I've watched that history as they continue to add new and different renamed masking tools. Not so here. There they are. That's it. We're going to learn them next week. They have them. They're there. We'll come back next week and learn them. All right? But I do want you to see a clue that this is a fake. When you're in the Camera Raw filter, you don't see all the tools. You think you might, but you're missing 2 very obvious tools. If you're a Lightroom user or a Bridge Camera Raw user, you might be looking over here on the far bottom right. You might be looking for the Snapshots panel. It's in the real Adobe Camera Raw proper. It's just not in the fake. That's a clue. Lightroom users in the Develop module and Bridge with Adobe Camera Raw users are also going to notice that there's no cropping tool. There's no cropping tool in the fake, but there is in Camera Raw proper. Quick visual clues. I use this all the time, the visual clues. That is because I keep watching videos on YouTube and Vimeo and other places where experts are telling you that this is the real deal, not explaining to you that it's not the real deal. And I can look over their little video shoulders and see there's no cropping tool, there's no snapshots tool. These people are making a horrible training mistake. And if they aren't showing you that you need to make a smart object before you use this in Photoshop, that would be devastating indeed, especially over time. All right. That's about it. I just want to say, as an example, I've already composited this photo. I've already taken a blood moon and added it to my photo. I've taken 2 photos and I've composited them. I had to go to Photoshop to do it. Now that I'm in Photoshop, I'm not going back to Lightroom or Bridge to edit the masks in those ways if I want, or use those tools if I want. Instead, I'm going to convert this to a smart object and head up to the Camera Raw filter. Before I let you go, one final thing I promise. How do you unsmart object? Is there something up there that says, retake the dumb object? No. Dial down the intelligence of the object? No. I want you to see what Adobe calls unsmart object. Here we go. Unsmart object is called rasterize layer. I know, I'm with you. How convoluted can things be here in Photoshop, even though we love and adore him? Smart object, important. Rasterize layer is unsmart object. If you're ever on a game show. Hey, thanks for hanging with me on a huge week of training. It had to be. Next week, not so bad. Completely wonderful. This was wonderful. It was just a lot of data, wasn't it? It was a lot of stuff to stuff in your head. But now you're smart objects and growing ever smarter. Friday, we release week 3, main lesson 3, and all of its bonus videos. Remember, every Thursday, every Yours Day, I will answer your emails. It's the day I have to answer your emails and to work on your images. Be sure you send those. Ask for any handouts you want. Excellent work this week.